If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Are back. I'm Chris Evan, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Khalid Mohammed from Command 11 in Pakistan, Agent 711. And directly below him, my good friend Randy Nance from back home in Texas, combat wounded, Green Beret. We still don't have a handle that'll stick on Randy yet, but we will find one. And directly below me, my good friend Jeff MD, 26 years CIA case officer, author extraordinaire, in-house 007. And we know that 007 wasn't America. Thanks for sending us hate mail and letting us know that on a regular basis.
He was from Winnipeg.
That's right. That's the Canadians say that 007's from Winnipeg. I got a diatribe from that guy. If I had printed the email out, it was probably 4 pages long, telling me I was an asshole and I was the idiot for calling Jeff 007 because Jeff's American. And anybody who knows anything about James Bond knows that he's from Winnipeg, Canada. Oh my God. These people are they're mentally ill. But anyway, we're going to do Khalid's sit rep, Command 11 sit rep first, but it's all on one topic on his friend John. How do you pronounce his last name? Rosamondo?
Rosamondo.
Yeah. So we're going to discuss his work on the Muslim Brotherhood. Then we're going to get into the main topic tonight, which is essentially education after 9/11 2.0. When nobody really wants to send their kids to public schools, even if the public schools are open at that particular point in time. However, before then, we're going to do the conflicted question of the night. If you're not familiar with this, conflictedthegame.com. These are 14 card decks, card games, all set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. 99% of the questions have some element of morality to them, hence the name Conflicted. So here we go. I'm going to read this off. We're going to give you our answers at the end of the broadcast. We would like to see your answers before then in the live chat or in the comment section down below. Haley was a young child when the complete collapse of modern society took place. Now in her 50s, she looks back and thinks of our time. How do you think future generations will describe the people living in our society of today and why? That's an interesting one.
That's a really interesting one.
That is an interesting one. I'll be looking forward to hearing everybody's answers. So John Rosamondo wrote this article a number of years ago, looks like March 1st, 2017. Explanatory memorandum detractors ignore evidence about the Muslim Brotherhood in America. And just like everything else John does, it's very exhaustive. He's got all kinds of sources that he quotes. He's ultra thorough. I'm not going to bore you by reading this entire article here, but what I will do is we'll turn it over. I'm going to turn it over to Khalid, and he's going to explain this article because he posted it on his X, and we'll start there.
John's one of the foremost experts on Muslim Brotherhood. He's anything. I go to John when I have a question on Muslim Brotherhood. He's written a book on it, on the Arab Spring. He's written a book on the Muslim Brotherhood. He is well connected within their network, so he knows who is who. We had that 1 hour interview with him when we had him on SDN that one night, and it was literally a fireball interview where it's the way John and I talk to each other. It's just bang, 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 names and locations. We go back and forth. What John did was back in 2017, he went back and did a history on Muslim Brotherhood in what's happened in the U.S. And he went all the way back to 1983. That's when the Muslim Brotherhood was first exposed. Their agenda inside the United States was first exposed with, I think it was the Holy Land Foundation. It's the largest terrorism case ever filed in U.S. history. And at that time, CARE, Islamic Societies of North America, Muslim Brotherhood, Muslim Students Association, all of them were laid out completely naked. You had testimony from people on how they were operating, how they were covers for Al Qaeda, how they were covers for Hamas. The Holy Land Foundation was taking revenue from US based Muslims, repopulating it and sending it to Al Qaeda, sending it to Hamas. That's how they got caught. And when the FBI filed the case, that's the funny part. 1988, FBI filed a case against the Muslim Brotherhood and brought all these witnesses, all these sources from inside the Muslim Brotherhood to talk about what they were doing. And all of this stuff is documented. Well, if you read through John's article, all of this stuff is linked in his article. And there's books in there, there's explanation documents in there, 50, 60, 70 page documents where they lay everything out. What we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how we're going to achieve it, how do we influence American society, how do we take over slowly. My problem is you've known about Muslim Brotherhood since the 1980s, and it's now 2025, and everyone's saying, why is no one taking action on the Muslim Brotherhood? You knew in the 1980s this is what they were doing. The FBI filed a case against them for funding Hamas, and still you didn't declare them a foreign terror organization. When we use the term sheeple, this is what we're talking about. That this was out there. It was open. It was well known. No one said anything. Now all of a sudden,
let me add a little bit of context here, and then I've got questions for all y'all. But this particular article that John wrote not only did all the stuff that Khalid just mentioned, but he also critiqued what was called the explanatory memorandum in 1991 issued by the Muslim Brotherhood. And if you want to cut straight to the chase, it was basically saying that the goal is one global Islamic state. And they justified it through all kinds of things. I will read through this as fast as I can. That's the high level points. And then I'll be coming to Jeff first, then Randy tonight. So the explanatory memorandum, formally titled an exploratory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the Brotherhood North America, is an 18-page internal planning document written by Muhammad Akram, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, dated May 22nd, 1991. It outlines a long-term strategic vision for establishing and expanding the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood's Islamic movement in the United States and Canada, framing it as a settlement process to integrate Islam deeply into North American society. The document was discovered in 2004 during an FBI raid on the home of Ismail El-Baris, a suspected Brotherhood operator, hidden in a sub-basement wall, and later entered as evidence in the 2007-2008 Holy Land Foundation terrorism financial trial. I'm going to skip down a bit. The main objectives. The document identifies 5 core goals for the Brotherhood's work in North America. Number 1, establishing an effective and stable Islamic movement led by the Muslim Brotherhood. Number 2, adopting Muslims' causes both domestically, i.e. civil rights, and globally, i.e. support for Palestinian issues. Number 3, expanding the base of the observant, committed Muslims. Number 4, unifying and directing the efforts of existing Muslim groups. Number 5, presenting Islam as a comprehensive civilizational alternative to Western secularism and supporting the establishment of a global Islamic state, aka caliphate, wherever possible. And I'm going to give you a handful of key strategies, and then I'm coming to you, Jeff. Akram proposes a shift from fragmented, cautious activism to a bold, comprehensive settlement model where the Brotherhood embeds itself in society like roots in soil. This involves, number 1, mental and organizational shifts, moving from elite-focused preaching to mass mobilization, from hesitation to decisive action, and from abstract ideas to concrete organizations. It emphasizes coalition building, absorbing other groups, and mastering the art of coalitions, absorption, and cooperation. Number 2, historical staging, recognizing phases of Islamic activism in North America from self-discovery and mosque building in the 60s and 70s to openness and revival in the 80s and 90s. Number 3, jihad as a civilization process. The Brotherhood's role is described as a civilization jihadist process to achieve cultural and political dominance gradually. Number 4, practical steps. Developing resources, conducting studies on U.S. society, creating flexible implementation timelines, and prioritizing Islamic centers as hubs for education, recruitment, and community building, likened to the Prophet Muhammad's mosque in Medina. And 5th and finally, organizational overhaul, forming comprehensive networks with specialized branches for DAWs, proselytizing, politics, media, economics, youth, women, and security. Jeff, I mean, this is a group that essentially seeks to take control of everything. They want one global state, and they want to take over America. And we all know, however Texas goes is how the United States is going to go.
Yeah.
How they, in my opinion, they've exploited the rights that we have, under the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. But how have they not been declared a terrorist organization when all of these other Muslim countries have declared them terrorist organizations?
That one, I think, well, it's politics, clearly. The Democrats don't want to declare it a terrorist organization because they look at the Muslim community as their constituents, and they don't want to risk pissing them off. The Holy Land Foundation was based in Richardson, Texas. My first tour in the U.S. was in Dallas. Okay. And my next door neighbor, who was an FBI agent and a good friend of mine, worked on that case for a long time.
Interesting.
I was not involved. It was a domestic thing. We did not get involved in that at all. But, we talked about it because of obviously the terrorist connections. And I think part of it was, too, is when they did make the case against the Holy Land Foundation, and I think 4 or 5 people went to prison, it was dismantled. And I don't want to criticize the FBI on this, but it's a cultural thing. And I've had this discussion with them. In an intel operation, it's really never over. I mean, you recruit someone his access, you run him, you collect the intel. But if he loses access, you need to find someone to replace him. Or if he retires, you need to recruit someone to replace him, so you still have access to that information. The Bureau looks at things as there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's a crime, an investigation, and a prosecution. Then they're done. Yep. And again, I'm not faulting them because it's a cultural thing for them. It's been there for decades. They treated it as a criminal investigation, and it should have been treated like a counterintelligence investigation. Yep. And that once they got the convictions, I'm not saying they just quit completely, but they didn't the next step would have said, okay, now that we've identified these guys and we've got a conviction on them, who are they working with? Who else is here? And they identified a lot of those people, but I don't think they went after them. I think they wanted to kind of declare victory and go home.
Well, before I go to Randy, it's actually really good timing that you just brought up the FBI, because in 1988, the FBI did a report describing a 6-phase plan to institute Islamic revolution in the United States, rooted in a 1983 book on the Muslim Brotherhood that emphasizes institution building and evangelization as a prelude to jihad. And then additional information that came out of that investigation you're referring to, they determined that other American Islamist groups like the Islamic Circle of North America, ICNA, who have leaders who have advocated making Islam dominant in the United States. Then you also have CARE, of course, the Council on American Islamic Relations. I mean, it's deep. It's multifaceted. It's deep. It's not, I could say it's a deep rabbit hole, but it's really a spider web of all these different things together. I mean, Randy, you're at one of several ground zeros in the country. And I know we've discussed this before, but from your perspective, what's happened in Irving, so part of DFW Metroplex, in the past 25 years? It's unrecognizable to me, but you're there on a frequent basis.
Well, not anymore. I don't go over there much anymore. I used to, but back in the day, and certainly in my late teens and early 20s, I lived in Irving for quite some time. I didn't go to high school there, but I was there right afterwards. And then I know people that went to the two main high schools there in Irving back in the day, and as we saw, and I think it was during the Obama years, wasn't it? That was my first indication. But even then, when I saw it, I thought, well, that's odd. The clock boy, right? The kid went to school, MacArthur High School in Irving, Texas, with a briefcase that looked like it could be a bomb. And so that was a big deal. But you go there now, it's all Islam. I mean, there's just a ton. It's definitely changed, but they're not the only ones, that side of Irving's gotten rough, but in all areas for sure. The barrio there isn't any friendlier.
No, like I said, it's virtually unrecognizable.
It is.
Khalid, how is the American, how is the Muslim Brotherhood tied to the Palestinian stuff beyond just Hamas? Like, what other aspects are they involved in the whole Palestinian state, Palestinian people, etc.?
Well, Muslim Brotherhood was actually born from Egypt. I mean, that's where the organization came from.
Okay.
And Egypt's tie with the Palestinians is very close. So when you look at how Egypt is linked up with the Palestinians and Muslim Brotherhood was born from there, they grew with that understanding, with the idea that we must create a two-state solution. No matter what it takes, we must create a two-state solution. And if you remember, right after the Arab Spring, they had a Muslim Brotherhood government for the first time in Egypt. The government collapsed because the mentality that Muslim Brotherhood wanted to build a government with wasn't something they could actually implement. That was the first time they ever had a chance to form a government under their own banner, and they failed completely, comprehensively failed. That's when al-Sisi came back in power, the general came back in power, and he took Egypt over. Now all we've had now is President al-Sisi, who is a former general. Muslim Brotherhood had one opportunity to prove that their model worked, and it failed. Their idea became, okay, if we cannot do it here, because you were banned in the UAE, you were banned in Saudi Arabia, you were banned in Jordan, you were banned in every country in the Middle East banned the Muslim Brotherhood. So you decide, okay, we can't do it here. Let's go to the West. And let's go to Europe, let's go to America, and let's start building our system. And what you started doing is everywhere a mosque was built, Muslim Brotherhood had their hand in it. They either owned it or they financed it. So that ideology was built in. Like the mosque that I grew up in the small town that I went to school in, a small university town, our imam was a professor at the university, Egyptian, but he was very Americanized, very liberal. So he taught us the Islam that fit the American point of view. He didn't teach us the Islam I would have learned in Saudi Arabia, where Sharia and women walk around in burqas, and you could have 5-6 wives, you can do this, you could do this. The problem is that when you look at Muslim Brotherhood, their model does not work. It's great for community building, but what you cannot build a government on the model they have, because you tried it once in Egypt, you failed, and you comprehensively failed. 2.5 years later, they were done.
So, Khalid, just to set up the next part of the conversation, could you explain how they've made a concerted effort to insert their ideological, culture into educational institutions from, elementary school on up?
Yeah, look, it's not just educational institutions. Muslim Brotherhood it's in their 91 manifesto. We want you to marry influential people. We want you to marry government officials so that we have the ability to influence decision making. That's part of their strategy. They married into power. So not only were you building into schools, not only were you building into mosques, but you were building into power structures. And then what you started doing is you started creating your own Manchurian candidates, people that looked American, talked American, walked American, lived American, but in their mind, they had that Muslim Brotherhood ideology. So once they came into power, they would bring that ideology forward, that I want to see this happen, I want to see this happen, and then they wouldn't fit in the model. You find very few people now in the US that are going to Islamic schools that have an ideology like I grew up with, that we assimilate in the culture we're in. We don't come and say, you must adopt my culture. No, no, no. We come and adopt your culture because we live in your country. We're guests there. So we become American. But if you look at the imam that came in after my teacher, Saudi, so radical that I literally told him that I will not pray behind you. You're radical. I'm not going to pray behind you. I'm done coming to this mosque now. That's where Muslim Brotherhood gets their control. Every Friday, you have all of the Muslims in the community come for Friday prayer. That's when they hit you. That's when they give you that lecture. Look at how badly Muslims are being treated. Look at what's being done to us. Look what's going on in the Muslim world. Look at what America's doing. Look at what Israel's doing. Look at what this person's doing. And they build up that victim concept inside you. And then they use that victim concept to turn you and say, okay, now we need to take over. We need to influence. We need to do this. That's how they motivate you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jeff, are there any, defensive measures, for lack of a better term, that we could establish to protect, this ideological infiltration into our institutions, whether they be schools or otherwise?
Well, there needs to be education of the people in the institution already, but the problem you run into is nobody believes you when you tell them. They immediately call you, oh, you're a conspiracy theory. Well, it's not a conspiracy if the person is telling you that's exactly what they want to do. I have news for you. And again, we always say it here, when someone tells you who they are, listen. But you got a lot of people who don't want to face reality or say, that's just too much for my brain to handle. The one I don't have the bandwidth for that. Well, you better find the damn bandwidth for it. But what Khalid was discussing, where they convince people they're, oh yeah, that you're discriminated against, you're a victim, you're this, you're that, and the only way you can remedy that is to kind of take over the whole system. Well, that's exactly what the socialists do.
Yep.
You're a victim of the evil billionaire. You're a victim of the Trump government. And then the only way we can remedy these problems is to, your student loan. The only way we can get rid of that is if we take over the government and forgive them. It's the exact same playbook. That's why I think the extremists and the socialists get along so well.
That makes a lot of sense.
They have the same techniques. They have a different end goal. Because the people who the socialists support, or who supports the socialists, on paper anyway, would be executed if this became a caliphate.
Yeah. Well, as you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, the people in Cuba that Castro murdered that helped him with the revolution, but as soon as the revolution happened, he took them out.
Russians, the same thing. The early leaders of the Russian Revolution, who were actually allies of Nikolai Lenin, were some of the first ones to be wiped out after they took out all the Tsarist people, all the white Russians. And that was a way to be, they would paint them when they wanted to get rid of them, is he's a secret supporter of the whites, the white Russian, the royalists. And then, okay, it's perfectly, now you've got all the permission you need to kill them.
Yeah, it's very underhanded. So Randy, you get the last word on this before we go to the main topic of the night. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this, but how do we, as Americans, real Americans, as you've defined us, right? Real Americans, not those other poser Americans. How do we maintain vigilance, Randy, and shut this shit down without, people screaming at the top of their lungs that we're being racist, we're profiling, we're not treating them fairly, blah, blah, blah. There has to be something that cuts in our favor at some point in time.
Well, I don't, that just remains to be if it's going to be peaceful or not, right? Because as we already know, just like whether it be September 11th, Pearl Harbor, or, you know, any other thing. We'll take Pearl Harbor, for example. We didn't want to be in World War II.
Right.
But, you know, everybody over there needed us in there, but we didn't want to go. So we needed an event to be convinced. And I don't think, you know, the American populace is any different now than it was then in that respect. I don't think we're going to, no matter how you can shout it from every rooftop, there are going to be some people that still say that because for some reason they just can't get past the part of what really happens in the real world. And, you know, I think it won't take very long. It won't take very long because it will become very obvious. If we just look at what's going on in Europe right now, we get to that point, people are going to understand what the gig is.
Well, let's just hone in on that a little bit. So you think that if we get to the stage where Great Britain and France are in particular, that will wake up enough Americans to make a difference? Or do you think we actually have to have 9/11 2.0 unfold before people get pissed off enough to actually try and do something about this?
Well, I just going off based of when they brought all these people in, you know, certainly for the last over the Biden years, I would say we're not going to wait for it that long, right? Because look how long it took for this to cook up into Europe. They're not going to want to wait another 20 years for it to get to that level. I don't think, in my opinion, I think that's why this was allowed. One of the reasons, you know, as I said all along, I think they're going to use all these illegal aliens they brought in to do the damage on the street. And you know, I never defined exactly who that was, but we know who it is now. But it could be any number of them for that fact. But you look at, let's just take ICE, for example. All of a sudden now every Mexican, you know, gets upset. Not every, but, you know, you do have some people get upset over immigration now because they're Spanish or maybe some of their family or illegals or it have been for some time or whatever. They see things completely differently. But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter at this point. You know, if you're here illegally, you got to go. And if they've been here that long, they should have they should have done something about it before now. But again, so I think people just fall back on their norms. I hope we don't have to go to accept a 9/11 2.0, but I think of the timelines we're looking at, that gets here long before we get to the part where Europe is right now.
Well, I mean, let me be even more blunt about it. You've got the Chinese trying to weaken us. You've got the Jewish, you know, the Israelis trying to control us and fuck us over and screw up our country and use our country for their benefits. You got the radical Islamic, you know, parties that's attacking America. When do we grow a set of balls and stand up and say no more? We're done with this shit. That's kind of the focal point I'm trying to drive to.
Well, you see that we should already be there. And some of us are, but most people, there's still a lot of people who are saying, oh, not so much. You know what I mean? And well, let's just take this 9/11 2.0, for example. You know, if you go out and try to tell anybody right now, any hospitals, you go anywhere, they think, you know, what I think is so funny, then you're all of a sudden a conspiracy theorist. But I'm like, you know, that meant something a couple of years ago. But now, you know, all those conspiracy theories have been proven true. So to say that to me lends no credibility.
Yeah,
it doesn't at this point.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact is, we know the Chinese, for example, like you just said, we know there's 50,000 of them during those 4 years. What are they doing? When are we getting them out of here? You know what I mean?
Well, the key thing there is you don't just leave China.
No, that's a fact.
CCP has to grant you permission. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Khalid.
Look, the first thing is, I mean, Chris, this is something, I mean, it's going to piss people off, but you need to stop the hyphenated American bullshit. The Israeli American, the Arab American. No, you never hear that in the Brits. You are either British or you are not. You are either French or you are not. America has to follow that line. You are either American or you are not. Define yourself as who you are. When I put both of my feet into, I have never called myself a Pakistani American. Never. I've never called myself a Muslim American because that's not who I am. When I am an American, I am an American. I've assimilated with that culture. I've accepted the values. I've accepted the culture. I'm part of the United States of America. But when I do hyphenate, I've got my foot in both boats. That means I can go this way or I can go this way. And it depends on my mood which way I go. That's the first step to stopping this. No more of this hyphenation. You are either American or you are not.
Well, Jeff, who was the first president who spoke about that? Was it Roosevelt? Was it Teddy Roosevelt who said we can't have hyphenated Americans?
God, I don't even know if they had hyphenated Americans that far back.
There was some,
but he is the one that said there's only one flag and one language. He
that
along.
may have been. I'm not sure on who first did that, and it was probably around the turn of the 19th and the 20th century, because we were going through a huge wave of immigration about that time. We had, I think we had the highest until now. We had the highest percentage of foreign-born people in the United States. But those people came here to assimilate. They came here to start their lives. They didn't come here. They didn't get welfare. They came here to get jobs and to build wealth for themselves and their families, to get access to land. That's the same reason the British came here, because if you were in Britain in the 1600s, unless you were a lord, you couldn't own land. You could rent it, but you couldn't own it. So they came here because they could own land. And that was what they saw, building generational wealth, establishing their family in the United States. But Khalid's right. This whole hyphenated American stuff is crap. But again, that's part of this. We're trying to divide you into groups. It used to be, if you're an American, damn it, you're an American. And I think one of the dumbest things we did, it used to be illegal in the United States to have dual citizenship, or it wasn't recognized. And if you could get in trouble if you were an American citizen and you had a passport from a foreign country.
The great American.
They changed that. And to me, that's like, dudes, come on. You're with us or you're against us. It's like when Cortez landed in Mexico, first thing he did was burn the ships. So his men were like, dudes, we're here for the duration. So figure your shit out.
Like I said, the great American melting pot. So before we pivot into the main topic, Shannon asks, how can we avoid a 9/11 2.0? And the answer is we can't. And Khalid's the Intel, SME here. Explain why. There's no avoiding 9/11 2.0. We have millions of terrorists in the country.
There are two ways you can avoid it right now. Number one, Donald Trump decides he's going to bomb every single terrorist haven around the world. That will put this thing on ice. Number two, you empower Homeland Security to arrest every single godforsaken illegal and ship them out of your country. Have planes ready for every country in the world. Load them up, put them on, and send them off. I'll give you a simple example. Germany just the other day announced, they said to every Afghani who is in line to migrate to Germany, they said, here, we'll do you a favor. We'll give you $5,000. Don't come to our fucking country.
Well,
go anywhere else. Don't come here.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I mean, I don't disagree with what you just said, but the chances of those things happening is slim to none. It's not going to happen. And because it's not going to happen, there's no avoiding 9/11 2.0. Anybody who thinks that you could let tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially many millions of jihadis into the country who hate our guts, that once this thing kicks off, that it's not going to last the rest of our lifetime, our kids' lifetime, and our grandkids' lifetimes, they're not paying attention at all. The numbers are overwhelming. We are going to have to deal with this head on. That's all there is to it. There's no other way to deal with it. So with that being said, let's get into the main topic. So every single episode in this 144 series titled The Long War can be watched on its own. You don't have to watch all of them in the series in order. You don't have to watch all of them at all. You can watch the ones that interest you, but there's one piece of context that ties them all together. So everything we're discussing in this Long War series, we've got approximately 90 episodes left to go out of 144, is we're talking in a post 9/11 2.0 scenario. And what that basically means is the intel's very strong, showing that Al-Qaeda and the rest of the Islamic Army, and this has been in the works for many, many years, by the way. This is not something new. They've been working on this strategy for over 20 years. They will attack 10 to 15 tier 2 American cities, so 100,000 to 500,000 people, simultaneously Each city will be attacked by 10, 11, 12 sleeper cells. Each sleeper cell will have somewhere from 4 or 5, 8, 9, 10 jihadis in each one. It will be absolute mass carnage. When we finally unsiege all of the hospitals that they take over, we will essentially evolve into the Middle East, where we will have terrorist attacks on a regular basis, if not every day, every other day. And that is not going to go away. And it's going to last for generations because of the traitors who let these jihadis into our country. Because why? They want to crush us. That's why.
Yeah.
People don't realize just how powerful America is. The easiest way to explain it is in dollars and cents. If you've heard me say this before, I apologize, but this is a great way to put a fine point on it. If you had $1 million and you converted it to 1 million seconds, that equals 11 days of time. That's something all of us can relate to, 11 days of time, okay? If you had $1 billion and you converted it to 1 billion seconds, that's 31.667 years. Not everybody who's watching can relate to 31 plus years, but many of us can. We know what 31 years is, and it's a long time. If you had $1 trillion and you converted it to 1 trillion seconds, that's 31,667 years, a number that none of us can comprehend. So when you take those numbers into account, our GDP this year will be $33 trillion. China, they said, was on track to hit somewhere around 18, 19 trillion. They'll be lucky if they hit 15 trillion. Their economy has been in a tailspin for years, and it's only getting worse, not better. The difference between 33 trillion and 15 trillion, do the math, take 17 times 31,000 years. And what do you come up with? Over 500,000 years. So we are 500,000 years greater in economic size than China. They are nowhere near our size. And the people who say that are lying. They're twisting numbers. It doesn't work that way. Here's the next thing. Go to Germany. They're number 3, $4.5 trillion annual GDP. Relative to our GDP, that's 1 million years of time behind us, converting the delta in trillions to trillions of seconds. Then you have a whole bunch of countries, maybe 10 or 12 countries in the 3.5 trillion. You have another handful that are at the 2.5 trillion. Nobody comes anywhere near the size, the wealth that we have in America. So when you're at the top, you're number one, there's only one way to go, and that's down. And especially when we develop this, I'd say, for lack of a better term, this Roman mentality that we have, that we are, it's hubris, right? We can never be taken down. Bullshit. So that's going to be the dog that bites us in the ass. So with that being said, the context being set of post 9/11 2.0, tonight's topic is education in this new era. Teaching without institutions. Why would you want your kids to be taught, without institutions? Who in their right mind is sending their kids to school when you have schools being attacked on a daily basis or every other daily basis across the country? When this thing kicks off, not only are people going to not send their kids to school in the short term, they're not going to send them to school in the long term. So there will have to be other means of passing on knowledge to the younger generation and teaching them. Could be homeschool networks, could be guilds, whatever the case may be, but we'll flesh some of this stuff out. At the end of the day, this is by design. This is part of the design of this 9/11 2.0 that was essentially Osama bin Laden's brainchild, that Hamza bin Laden and his lieutenants have picked up and ran with. And then they pulled all of the radical jihadis under the Islamic Army banner. Heck, it's only 6 months ago. There were all kinds of assholes on X and legacy media saying the Muslims will never coordinate and join up together and gang up on us. Now nobody even questions it, because those who had their eyes open, we saw this coming a mile away. With that being said, it's clear why people are not going to send their kids to school. And that in itself is a strike at American culture. I mean, I'm not against homeschooling at all. I mean, your kids might lose out on the opportunity to be a bisexual, LGBTQZY, whatever, you know, because they didn't have their minds twisted by these indoctrination centers. But either way, there's a cultural aspect. If kids aren't going to school, kids aren't playing football, which is about as American as apple pie, it'll have ripple effects taking kids out of the education system. And I'm not saying we can't do a better job homeschooling, but there's a cultural hit that comes with this. So tonight we want to explore the options. You know, how can we preserve and pass on essential knowledge that we have? This is pretty crazy. I'm going to end it on this, and then I'm going to come right to you, Khalid, and then Jeff, and then Randy after that. Is that somebody made a comment not too long ago, maybe 3 months ago, and they said the failure of America is that we built the largest, wealthiest, most sophisticated country in the world, and then we torpedoed our educational system, and the generations coming behind us are not educated enough, they're not smart enough to take over what we've built. So again, if you're at the top, you only got one way to go, down. And this, just look at what's happened with the Federal Department of Education since Carter brought it in. We've gone from number 1 in the world. The latest number I saw, we're like number 40 in the world now. And it's disgusting. I won't go too far down that rabbit hole because my watch will go off and I'll get all fired up and pissed off, stuff like that. So anyway, with all of that being said, Khalid, just expand a little bit on when these attacks have happened in neighborhoods in Pakistan. What's your people's view over there? What's their view on schools and sending their kids to schools?
Nobody goes to school. Nobody. When Army Public School in Peshawar was attacked, and 136 kids were held hostage.
Let me just inject one thing. This is a topic I'm very well versed in. I know this was done to destroy the country. That's what I've been screaming from the rooftops for decades now. So I appreciate people weighing in the live chat, but I know why this was done. Go ahead, Khalid.
When Army Public Schools was attacked, that was the last straw of the terrorist attacks in Pakistan. They took 136 kids hostage, executed all of them.
Wow.
Executed all of them. That was the end of schooling. For almost 3 months, nobody sent their kids to school. And no matter what you tried to do to get parents to send their kids to school, they went, no, I'm not sending them someplace where, you know, they're unarmed. No one's protecting them. And we even said that at that point, I was working with the Army at that point, and I said, look, we can give them, you know, armed guards, put a couple soldiers outside with weapons, and we'll protect the schools. And everyone went, no, we're still not sending them there. No, because the problem is, and this is what we've learned, and this is what you're going to find out after 9/11 2.0 kicks off. You will have your own Americans collaborating with these bastards. They will work with them. They will help them because they will get some kind of benefit from them. That is what we saw here in Pakistan. The people you would never believe would work with these people were collaborators. They were getting money from them. They were getting benefit from them. They were getting vehicles. We had people on our channels, anchors on our TV channels, that were getting fully loaded SUVs from the terrorists. And when they go on TV, they would be pitching that narrative. No, the terrorists aren't that bad. No, we need to talk to them. We need to negotiate with them. We need to give them space. We need to do. And we'd all go, what the hell happened? And then we got the list of how many anchors got how many vehicles. People were bought houses. The problem you have in the US right now is the educational system has collapsed to such a point that your own teachers aren't even good teachers anymore. They're just reading from a book now. They're not educating. They're just reading from a book. When you're reading from a book,
they're teaching things like pronouns here, Khalid.
Well, it's not just pronouns, Chris.
Well, when you're teaching pronouns and you're not teaching math, it's a problem.
Yeah. Look, I interviewed a guy the other day who wanted to come to work for Command 11, and I threw a simple critical thinking problem out for him. I said, "Give me a solution for this," and he got stuck. He couldn't even figure out what the steps would be to fix that problem. I went, "You graduated from where? And you don't know how to do critical thinking? How are you gonna work for me?" That's what we do all day long.
That goes back decades, though. We don't teach kids critical thinking or problem solving. We teach them to memorize and regurgitate, or at least we used to. Now we don't teach them shit, stupid shit like made up pronouns. Jeff, during COVID, the blue states, the blue jurisdictions took kids out of school, shut the schools down. And some of the statistics I've read are pretty sobering as far as the damage done to the development of those children. What could be done post 9/11 2.0? What could people do where they refuse to send their kids to school, but we know that kids thrive on having some element of routine. And if they don't have that element of routine, they fall behind really, really fast. What can we do as a society, a culture, with individual families?
Well, what you're going to end up having to do is have smaller community schools that are maybe done out of somebody's house, where you have a neighborhood school back, just like in the old days when you had a one-room schoolhouse and you had kids from 1st grade to 12th grade, all in the same room, learning from the same school marm. And that was out of necessity then. But you know what? Those kids did better in math than our kids do now.
Yeah.
And part of it is the older students would help the younger students, and it would teach them responsibility. It would teach them how to deal with people and how to help people, and they became more, I don't want to say empathetic because that's not the right word, but they got better at dealing with people. And the beauty of a school like that is that the curriculum isn't woke curriculum. The parents decide what they want their children to learn, and they teach them. I guarantee you there won't be they, them pronouns and gay pride week in a school like that. Well, there might be in California, but in most places, anybody who goes to that length is someone who is serious about the education of their children.
Yeah. Jeff is a coastal hater. He hates
Yes,
me.
I am.
He hates California. All right. Thanks, Jeff. So, Randy, I got a bit of a sideways question for you here. Let's say that we're a few months past 9/11 2.0. People are refusing to send their kids to school. What kind of propaganda do you think the legacy media is going to be spewing with regards to you have to send your kids to public school? They have to be indoctrinated in pronouns. They need it to be socialized, blah, 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 blah. I can see it just being a complete shit show myself, but I'm curious what you think.
Well, I'd go back to our closest example, the mask. Remember how people acted over the mask in public?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. And how some are still starting to act over vaccines and all the amount of shots that kids gets today that may or may not be the best for them. People get all up and riled about that as well. And I have no doubt. I mean, I thank God I don't have school age children right now, but you wouldn't be able to convince me to take them back. And I was one, and it wasn't even a focus of my house, but it was in my house. When I grew up, it wasn't mine. When I grew up, it was, well, when you turn 18, graduate high school, whoop, that's it. We're done. You're out. You're on your own. That's it. It was a success. This has been a success. Well, we'll see you later. That wasn't the way it was in my house.
Right.
Hell no, it wasn't. I told, my kids, hey, and the way I told them is starting by the time they start getting to middle school. That's where you got to start having the talks, really. Middle school and high school is where all that happens. I'm like, listen, you kids can go do anything you want. As stupid as that may be, you can go do whatever you want, and I won't say a word the day you graduate college. But until then, your ass belongs to me, and you're going to do what I tell you to do. And 2020 blew that right out of the water for me, and I've never seen it the same since. So,
spoken like a true drill sergeant. Last Green Beret. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to pivot into segment number 2, grassroots lifelines. Pop-up schools was the term that I came up with. So imagine this, the dust settles and official schools stay shuttered because nobody's willing to send their kids there. And you've got parents in neighborhoods. I think we'll start, piecing together, I don't know, underground schools, learning circles, much like Jeff essentially said. and turning things like living rooms into classrooms and your garages into classrooms, those sort of things. And everybody in those small communities, neighborhoods, bringing their kids to these pop-up homeschool networks, because I think probably one of the best things that we have in middle school and high school, or at least we did in the past, was we had teachers who specialized in specific things. So you had somebody who was a shop teacher, automotive teacher, history, math, geography, so on and so forth. And in elementary, you don't get that. You get the cat lady who reeks of cat piss, who teaches your kids everything that she believes and not what the parents believe in. But again, I'm trying not to get too crazy on that topic because of my blood pressure. I'm having a look at it right now. Yeah, it's good. 123 heart rate already. It's working. So imagine these pop-up homeschool networks. Like, they're not going to be fancy, and they'll essentially be alliances of neighbors and parents and pooling together.
Yep.
And I think that's actually a good way to raise kids today. That's a good middle ground. There are a number of parents these days who chip in X amount of dollars, let's say $5,000 a year per kid, and everybody in the neighborhood does that, and they hire a teacher to come in and teach them, or they hire multiple teachers to come in and teach them. And I mean, it's kind of like homeschooling on steroids, I guess, but I can see that happening as well. And I think this is also how you get back to old school America. Bad pun, I know, but gluing communities, gluing families together, people not being we're more isolated now in my mind than what we will be post 9/11 2.0, because nothing brings people together like the shit hitting the fan, right? So I think that once we go down that road, I don't foresee on a large scale, except for maybe inner cities, where the public school model ever flourishes again. And that's actually maybe one of the few positive things that'll come out of this, pile of crap. But Khalid, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think will spark, homeschool meetups in a community, in a neighborhood, especially the ones that were close by to the X, the ones that were closely hit? How long does it take before people say, holy shit, I better get my kids some sort of education, some sort of routine? I don't want to send them to school. We need to talk to the neighbors. How long does it take to get over that threshold?
It doesn't take very long, Chris. It doesn't take very long, because see, I'll give you Pakistan as a model.
Okay.
You have two layers in Pakistan. You have the filthy rich, and you have the dirt poor. The middle class in Pakistan is very small, and it gets smaller and smaller every month. Every month it gets smaller and smaller. So what you have in Pakistan is the education system set up this way: is all the people that have money send their kids to private schools. They're English medium schools. All they do is they speak English and they pretend like they're elitists. The public school system is basic shitbag. You don't learn anything there. The teachers don't care. When you go to class, the teacher's sitting there with a newspaper or a magazine. They're reading the paper and they're going, do whatever you want. I've got to deal with you for an hour. What parents started to do is they started to set up park schools where the kids would go. Instead of going to public school, they would hire a teacher, and instead of getting a building, they'd go to the park. And the kids would sit there. They have a whiteboard, and the teacher would teach them whatever subject for an hour, hour and a half. The next teacher would come along. They would teach the next subject. Next teacher would come along an hour and a half later. They would teach the next subject. And you'd roll through that way. So you'd maximize the space you have without having to spend extra money for a building. So parents in our country, in this country, decided that was the better way to go. That instead of going, okay, wait a minute, let me hire a tutor. Let me hire 6 or 7 different tutors that come and teach my kid every different subject. Let's set up a little park school. No building. Go sit in the park. You get fresh air. You have a teacher come. They have a whiteboard. They teach you the subject. They get done. Next teacher comes. Okay, you've got a test to take. All right, we'll pay the photocopy machine X amount of money to photocopy everything they need to do. They would download books from the internet. They would teach grassroots level. Values were taught. Culture was taught. Math was taught. The kids that go to park schools can do math in their head. The kids that go to the elitist schools need to get a calculator to figure out what 2 + 2 is. I still do it in my head because my education was Back in the old days, where if you touched a calculator, the teacher picked up a stick and smacked you with. What are you doing with the calculator? What, you can't add 123 plus 245? You can't do that on paper?
You didn't get the memo from California? Math
No,
is,
I stayed away from California in the education days.
math
Way
is,
far away from California.
math is racist.
I know, but
They teach kids on the left coast math is racist. Yeah.
but Chris, the problem is that we need to get back to fundamentals. And what you'll find is after 9/11 2.0, you will find parents going, you know what? Basics, math, science, English. Let's start from there. We'll build up from there. History we can wait on. Biology we can wait on. Science we can wait on. We don't need to rush those things. Now, some people are going to talk about church schools, Catholic schools, Protestant schools, schools that are inside your churches. Those will also manifest themselves. But you have to keep in mind, churches will be targets. So
Yeah.
you are sending your, just like you'd be sending your kid to a public school, you're sending your kid to an automatic target.
I was thinking in California, they'll have, instead of math and science and all those good subjects, they'll have things like pronouns, butt fucking, pronouns, butt fucking, pedophilia, gerbils 101.
I heard they'll just give you a CDL. You just say, hey, I want to drive a truck. I need a CDL. Just...
Only if you don't give your name. You can't give your name or any ID.
No name mentioned. No name mentioned.
So how frequently have we said over the past few years, you got to pay attention to Europe and other Western countries to see what they're going to try to bring here? So check this out quickly. So this is a girl in France. Homeschooling is now illegal. They want your kids to at the age of 3. The official reason is fighting terrorism. The reality is many parents did homeschooling during COVID and saw the benefits for their kids and family. This is a threat for the government, so they made it illegal. So check this out. I had a quick search to see where it's just outright illegal. So it turns out in France, it's not quite illegal. It's heavily restricted in France. You can see right at the top, but it's essentially so heavily restricted, it might as well be illegal. But then you get to some of these other countries, Andorra, Belarus, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Germany, Greece, Malta, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, San Marino, Sweden, and Turkey. It is completely illegal to do anything like that. So any homeschooling. So coming back to you, Jeff, let's assume that the internet either goes away or is very unreliable. How hard is it going to be to find things like schooling materials? For example, just out of curiosity, like when you were in Afghanistan, for example, were there libraries and lots of books for youngins and kids to learn?
No.
Yeah, I expected that.
No. Most of them couldn't read anyway.
Yep.
Okay. So granted, there will be, tatters of America left over, but what do you think parents will have to do to find educational material? Books.
Well, if the internet's down, you're going to have to find old people who actually have books.
Yep.
Dead tree format, or the old school CD-ROM, and you have it on a laptop or something like that. But the beauty of that is the parents will control the curriculum. And you could even go into a school that's closed down and get textbooks and stuff on, how to teach kids to read, things like that. Just stay away from all the woke crap, but you just ignore the parts you don't like. And, the teachers unions are going to be the ones that are going to be screaming bloody murder the most, because it's they're going to be out of work. But the educational experience will be greatly improved because parents who go to that length to make sure their kids are getting educated, maybe they're hiring private tutors, that sort of thing, those kids are not going to be discipline problems, because they act up in school, parents are going to knock crap out of them.
Yep.
And so, because those parents are busting their ass to make sure those kids get an education. Today, you've got so many wild kids in school whose parents just don't care, that a lot of these teachers spend their glorified babysitters. They can't teach because they're trying to break up fights and keep people from, smoking weed in the back row.
Right. So, as you were mentioning teachers unions, I thought I got to pull up a video of Randy Weingarten. Let me see where I put it. Here it is.
God, she's a witch.
She's psychotic, right? Like,
Yeah.
She's probably the ugliest lesbian I've ever seen. Number one, inside and out, but she's a nutcase. She just retired as the head of the National Teachers Union, which is why you tweak me when you said that. She jumps around and bounces up and down like a complete nutcase. This is who has led our teachers for how many years in America? Like decades. And the person who posted this said, Randy Weingarten bouncing around during her Labor Day speech. I saw it, so now you have to see it too. 14 seconds.
Is that the billionaires don't understand that this country was created in protest and in resistance to fight off a king, not to recreate a king.
And that's actually really mild. Some of her stuff is just...
Yeah, she's a lunatic.
She's a friggin' nutcase, man.
Well, she's a communist.
She is, actually. She is. By the way, what do communists think of lesbians and gays? I don't think they think too much of them.
They think very highly of them.
In the Soviet Union.
Oh, yeah. They're very
That's why I'm saying,
You got sent to a gulag.
Russia, yeah.
Yeah, it was
Go
considered
out and be proud about
antisocial behavior.
Yeah. So, Randy, coming to you next, and curious what your thoughts are. How are parents going to be able to measure where their kids are as far as progress is concerned if they don't participate in these pop-up schools that Jeff originally alluded to? Do you think it really matters because nobody's going to college and university for a while anyway?
No, education will always matter. Even before we had a bunch of those institutions, it matters. I was thinking when you asked him that question earlier, man, well, you need to go out and find, I guarantee there's an old person somewhere that still has one of those old timey, what's it called? The books. Shoot.
The readers.
Yeah, where you had A, B, and then it went all the way through the alphabet, but they were
Encyclopedias.
Encyclopedias. There's the word.
I tried to find it. They're hard to find.
I know, but somebody still has some because those were like Kirby vacuums back in the day. People had to make monthly payments to pay those things off.
We had a set.
So, but to know where your kid is in development is always going to be very important. And hopefully you get what this will do that will be better for families is actually make parents realize they have to actually pay attention to that. You can't just send your kid to school. I mean, even the day when I did, and it was getting a little different when I brought my kids, some of it was not by choice because my son was very good at math and he didn't like to write it out, which was a problem all the way from kindergarten to when he graduated. I can't tell you how many, teacher parents conferences we had over the years just for this kid not writing down but we were always still very active and we always knew, what was going on in his life and where he was at. His sister, the same thing. She was much easier, obviously. But, that's always going to be important. And if you don't know, if you're not connected in there, well, then you better be talking to some people that do. You know what I mean? Because there'll be people in the community helping with those things. Someone, some way, somehow, you should be able to find that information out. We all kind of know some of it's common sense, right? Some of it is. But, I think having an official or like an actual timeline would be nice so people know, relatively where their kid is or not.
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have a testing system either way. I mean, even if you go with community schools, you're gonna have teachers that are still around. The teachers aren't going to disappear.
No,
but you just need to figure out how you're going to teach them because schools will be targets, churches will be targets, buildings will be targets, and people are going to be afraid to send their kids to a place where they could get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. So the only reason I pulled this one up, our parish managed to get a bunch of homeschoolers connected just by starting a group me chat and allowing families putting its existence out on social media. It's a way easier to coordinate with the whole group instead of trying to manage it all through the parish offices. So if the interwebs continue to function post 9/11 2.0, then leveraging the internet certainly is going to make things a lot easier. I read a couple things while I was studying up on this subject, things as far as even if you teach your kids, inside your home and they're not part of the group, you got to find these group activities for them that they would normally get at school, right? So just to continue socializing them, those sort of things, which is a valid point. So let's pivot into segment number 3, which is skills, because that's the other piece to it, right? Like, I think one of the biggest screw ups in our educational system in the past 30, 40 years is trying to say we're all equal. We're not all equal. This is the liberals confusing equality of outcome with equality of opportunity. They are not the same thing. And a great example would be you work your ass off. This is why communism sucks, right? You work your ass off, you deserve the fruits of your labors. And the fresh air inspector who does nothing but sits around with their thumb up their ass, they do not deserve the same outcome, and they should have had the same opportunity, right? So with that being said, when we got rid of all the vocational stuff, VOTEC, that's when things started going downhill, because what they did is they took kids who were not at the same level as advanced kids, not at the same level as average kids, and they lumped them all in together. Well, here's the deal. When you lump in the smartest, the not smartest, and everybody in between, you either teach it to the top kids and fail everybody else, or you lower the common denominator so everybody can get by. And that's what's happened in America. So the average and the above average kids have suffered tremendously as a result of that. There's very little vocational training left. I personally think in a post 9/11 2.0 world that skills, vocational skills, will take on a whole new level of importance. Even today, nobody gives a shit about your gender, degree. It means nothing. It's not worth the paper it's written on. But the kid who graduated from high school and went and became a machinist, an electrician, whatever, and let's say it's 10 years post high school, they have no debt other than maybe a home mortgage, whereas the other ones, they've got 3 degrees, a mountain of debt, and they don't know shit from Shinola. So
and they can't find a job.
Yeah. So on the topic of skills, already these degrees aren't worth the paper they're written on, but they're going to be worth even less after 9/11 2.0. And like the blue collar skills. And I think veterans will probably play a role in this as well, as far as teaching youngins skills, whether it be hunting. Heck, look at the videos that come out of Asia where you've got elementary level kids disassembling and reassembling pistols faster than most American adults can disassemble and reassemble a pistol. I mean, it's good knowledge to have in my mind, especially if you're a gun supporter. So at the end of the day, the way I see that part kind of fleshing out, there won't be textbooks. It'll be hands-on work, because that's the best way to learn how to do things, right? As well as the fact that if you have supply chains disrupted, the guy who can rebuild something is a pretty valuable guy. And that's a good way to, set your kids up for success in this post 9/11 2.0 world. Mechanics, farming, all the trades, all of that stuff will have tremendous value. And I think that there will be people communicating across the country with shortwave HF, which at the end of the day, I hate to keep repeating this, but people read the labels on radios, right? And they're like, oh, it says it can go 35 miles, and they put it in the drawer and wait for the shit to hit the fan, and it can't go a mile in their urban environments. Shortwave HF is the only Walking Dead solution out there for the average American. There's military stuff that we can't buy. But anyway, I think that it becomes like the next layer of building out, tying the nation back together again on a very specific topic. Hey, have you guys got anybody in your area that the next town over that's capable of doing this? Could you trade? Because we got people that could do these other things. We've discussed this at length, the barter economy. So Khalid, coming to you first. What are your top 3 skills, hands-on skills in a post 9/11 2.0 world?
Electrician, plumber, carpenter.
Why?
Electrician, because you've got to get power running in your houses. You got to get electricity running in your houses. And because what's going to happen with 911 2.0, a lot of your electrical appliances are not going to work anymore. So you need that electrician there. Plumber, because you need water. You need water in your house, and the plumber's the only one that can do that. Carpenter, because whatever you break, whatever you need to fix in your house, walls that need to go up, whatever it may be, you cannot do without a carpenter. Those three skills, when you are taught those three skills, you can build a life from there. I remember when I was in high school, woodshop was a required class for us. Male or female, did not matter. Required class for us. I learned drafting in 11th and 12th grade. I spent 2 hours a day in a drafting class. I can even to this day, I can draw an entire model of a house, down to pipes, down to beams, everything. I can draw my own plans. That was a benefit I got, even though I was studying business. That was a benefit I got because they gave me a skill. Now, if you don't build skills into your future economy, especially when you start talking about AI is going to take away the educated degree economy. So you're not going to have journalists anymore. You're not going to have writers anymore. You're not going to have people writing code for software anymore because AI will be able to do it. So you've got to shift your economy anyway. The best way to do it is to go to hand skills. And if you start thinking about it from this point, you'll already have a model in mind that when shit hits the fan, what do we need to set up first?
I appreciate that, Khalid. So, Jeff, same question for you, and then I have a second question. What would the top 3 skills be post 9/11 2.0?
I would throw a mechanic in there because you're not going to be able to take your car to the dealership to get it fixed. And I would take farming, gardening. You got to have the ability to have. If you can't get food, you got to know how to grow it. And it's not like just you poke a seed in the ground, and water it and hope it grows. You need to know what you're doing. You need to have practiced what you're doing, and you need to know what will grow in your area, what won't grow in your area, that kind of thing. So, Khalid's things covers shelter, and you need food, shelter, water. His covers water too, and then you kind of need transportation too. So I think that covers them.
All right. So now we have these guilds, whatever you want to call them, where hands-on skills are being taught. And I can imagine it will only grow as time goes on. Then that becomes a target of the terrorists. So how do you concentrate people for learning purposes without overly exposing yourself to the gazillion jihadis who are still in the country?
You do the apprentice program. If your child, male or female, wants to learn how to be a plumber, let him go work with a plumber. It's just 2 people then, and he's the plumber's assistant or she's the plumber's assistant.
There you go.
And then after they do that for 6 months, maybe they go work with a carpenter or they go work with an electrician. And it's just 2 people or 2 or 3 people. It's not a school. It's not a big target. And where you work may change every day because maybe you're going to this house to fix this problem. Then you're going to that house to fix that problem. So it's going to be hard to target you in that sense as well.
Yeah, that's really good. That's awesome. So Randy, same question for you. What are you picking for top 3? And I got one in the top of my head. I'm not going to say it, but if you don't put it out there, I'm going to be very disappointed in you as a Green Beret.
What, eat snakes? I don't know. Now you got me. Now you got the pressures on. I agree with both of them. I think honestly, right off the bat, for most everyday people, it's going to be your survival type of stuff. Can you grow, as y'all already mentioned, agriculture? We had to learn that when we came here. The Indians taught us because they had to learn to do it. Right, that's how you survive on the land here. Hunting skills. For whatever a little bit of wildlife is left, there will be some for a short period of time. And then if you want to be able to walk farther or now, you might be able to, in some other areas that are farther out, you might. But heck, even maybe finding water and food, right?
Yeah.
might be a very important skill to have after this type of thing happens. But I think some of it is, being prepared and then, having a little bit of luck too. All luck always plays into it somehow.
How about firearm skills, hunting, being a sniper?
Well, I did say hunting. I did say hunting.
Yeah.
Which would require firearm skills. But again, it also comes down to the war of attrition. Do you have any bullets left? Can you reload? If you can't reload, all you got's what you got, and then is it a gun that needs to be cleaned all the time or not? Can you get away with not having to keep this thing perfectly cleaned and oiled and it still work?
You mean like a 22 LR rim fire?
Yeah, some of those think of most of the old rifles, man. They're not like today's. They're more like the AK-47. That thing, you can have it in mud, drop it, beat that thing up. Heck, we even blew some up, in the beginning where they were just having us destroy all the weapons we came across during the initial invasion of Iraq. And we would put them in big piles and blow them up. The problem was some of those that were on top came back down, weren't that damage. You could still throw a magazine in it and fire the damn thing.
Too funny.
So we had to run them over after that. So
that'll work. That's actually a funny story, Randy. So that's 3 segments down, 2 more to go. Just a quick reminder, if you head on over to survivaldispatch.news, that's our Substack. When we're live, you'll see the video up top here, which is 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. When you don't see the video up there, when we're not broadcasting, I should say, you'll see the daily sit rep. And the sit rep, if you haven't seen them, is essentially the written counterpart to tonight's episode. So we have some people just do not have time to watch our marathon podcast, and they prefer to go here and just read. And you can sign up for $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, which gets you 2.5 months for free. And you get a whole bunch of benefits. Number one, we have guardians across the country. So our guardian signal chats, we have 4, maybe 5. There's another one coming here shortly, where the exchange of information between the guardians is phenomenal. It's across the country. It's everything from first person reports and intelligence across the country to we have a survival and prepping channel, for example, and the gardening has been a big topic this week. And we've got some very skilled people when it comes to, having a garden and producing food. And it's not a simple thing to
even
do.
The small livestock like rabbits or chickens.
Exactly. But that conversation's been phenomenal. We have a general chat. We have one that's survival and prepping. We have one for emergency notifications. We have another one that our news team runs, and it's just nonstop news and intelligence that goes in there. And like I say, there may just be a 5th one. It may even already be there and just nobody knows about it yet. But we'll talk a little bit more about that next week, but it's pretty cool. And by the way, the emergency alerts, the SDN system, survival dispatch emergency notification system, shit hits the fan. Notifications go to your email. Notifications go to our Substack. Notifications go to the signal channel for SDNs, and they also go to the POC-Link radios. And just an update for y'all, I posted a huge email from POC-Link today that detailed all of the things that they're doing to allow over 100 radios in each group. They're on it. It's not floundering. We will get it done and make sure that everybody is into one big family, one big group before too long. Of all the vendors I've worked with, I've never had a vendor like POC-Link say, hey, could you let us into your group community so we can support your people together? That's pretty awesome support in my mind. So let's move on to segment number 4, which is essentially faith circles. And I think churches definitely have a role to play in educating youngins, whether it's before or after 9/11 2.0. So I can also foresee issues like Randy can speak to it in Texas. Some of the churches are so big and seat thousands of people, and they still have to do, 4 sessions on a Sunday just to accommodate all the members at each location. That's a pretty big target, but our good friend Keith Graves, Christian Warrior Training, is helping people increase their security, and I'm sure that'll only intensify after 9/11 2.0. But churches also have areas where you can conduct school where you conduct teachings, right? Ours, which is a little, our church is in BFE and does not stand for battlefield execution. It stands for Bum F Egypt. He has a kitchen and a bunch of tables, like it looks like something out of school cafeteria, and it's used to eat, but it's also used for other sessions as well. So churches have some of the things in place already, like the seating, the chairs, the whiteboards, the chalkboards, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of not a bad consideration for having your kids learn there, as long as you have ample security. And you also, it's in small town America still, at least, maybe not, big city America. The church is still kind of the focal point of all of our small country communities, at least here in the South. So I think then you also get all the benefits of, teaching morals and values from the Bible, which almost all of us grew up with here. But that goes on to all the other things that churches, I mean, I've seen churches teach archery, for crying out loud. I remember when I was a youngin' that a friend of mine's church they went to, they had Wednesday night archery, which is pretty cool. That's a great skill to have. Who was saying recently? Somebody was saying recently they grabbed a recurve bow. Was it you, Randy?
Couldn't hit a damn thing with it.
Yep.
Couldn't hit a damn thing with it. But that was one and only time, and that was only a year or two ago that I got to shoot one. But it humbled me very quickly.
There's 3 takedown recurve bows right there. And I can tell you that I don't know how many arrows I broke and how many shots it took, but it took a period of time of practicing daily to get good at it. It's definitely a skill. It's not something you just pick up and pull a trigger like a gun sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other part with using churches is there's a spiritual aspect to it. Call it spiritual glue, to pull people together, whether it's the parents, the children, or all of the above. And we know from when America was formed over the years, if you think of the Wild Wild West, well, you think of Fort Worth, Randy. I mean, why did Fort Worth spring up? It was a commerce location. You could get food. There was a couple old hotels. Well, not then, but now very old hotels, saloons that are still there to this day.
Well, it's funny. I always wondered how Dallas got here, right? Because Fort Worth had the rodeo. That's where everybody brought their livestock. That's where the market was, what we would call, right? So I always wondered how Dallas got on the map, because they didn't have any of that. That's a blue Democrat. That's a faggy city now. It doesn't even qualify as Texas. They voted for Hillary, for crying out loud, in 2016, Dallas County. So they say.
Yeah, so they say. Touche. I agree with that totally. So actually, Randy, I'm going to come to you first on this one and ask you, how will leaning on faith change the tone of the teaching environment for kids in post 9/11 2.0? Because my opinion is very few kids these days go to Sunday school or church and learn any traditional American values.
Well, it's what part of our problem is, right? We've gotten so far away from God and our religion that we don't even know anymore. Certainly the kids don't, youth don't,
Agreed.
And, you talk about the youth of today, and certainly for the next 10 or 15 years, I knew how bad it was the moment they said it, because I was still just shocked when COVID came along. They said, "Oh, well, the kids, we don't need to go to school." It's like, holy crap, what are you talking about? And you think about what those kids are already going through. We all have a spiritual side, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not. It is a fact. So without it, you know what I mean? And then you look at what faith also does for you, right? Where does hope come from? From faith. Hope comes from faith. And without hope and faith both, we have nothing. And it's been said many times, that's a fact. Without hope, people ends up, just killing themselves over nothing, because they don't have any hope. And we've seen that, whether it be in third world countries or other places around the world, or even Africa. Look at some of those communities that have no hope there. Look at where they all end up.
Yep.
So that is why it's so important to also have a faith connection in whatever community you're in, because there is a God and he does care about what's going on, and you kind of need to have a relationship with him.
what would your go-to be as far as the Bible, whether it be verses or values, to explain the 9/11 2.0 attacks to young children?
Well, you're probably going to use several portions of the Bible, I would imagine. You know what I mean? But you're going to have to show them that even the Bible, it says bad things happen to good people. It's just kind of the way it goes because we do have good and evil in the world. You can't have one without the other, apparently. You know what I mean? It's just the way it goes. Hang on.
Okay. What the hell?
Good. Technical difficulties.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So, it's a very important aspect for that reason, but it also helps us kind of stay in line too, right? Because we're answerable to somebody, to a higher power. We're answerable for our actions and our behaviors. And that matters. As we see today, everybody wonders what's going on. Well, that's what it is. Problem is we've gotten so far away from it. Now I think everybody, that there's no accountability for yourself and past what you do in this life. And we can see how it has unraveled our entire society.
Unraveled is a good choice of words. Khalid, what happens to the conservative Christian Americans post 9/11 2.0 when confronted by or seeing practicing Muslims in their communities?
Well, look, it's really difficult to say because, the church has always been the unity factor of every community. And if the church falls in and takes that role again, then your community will stand strong. When Randy was talking, the thing I was thinking is we haven't gone away from God. We've been pushed away from God. We've had so many distractions and problems and things put between us and God that we don't think that, there's a higher power that can solve this for us. I'll give you, as a Muslim, I'll give you the two books of the Bible that I read the most: the Psalms and Job.
Why?
Those are the two. The book of Psalms will always give you hope. It will always keep you grounded. It'll keep you mentally there because it's a story that will teach you something every time you read it. Every time you read it, depending on what situation you're in, it'll speak to you in a different way. The book of Job shows you that no matter what happens to you, God is always there. God is always there. No matter what happens to you, you stand strong in your faith. Job stood strong in his faith, and God took care of him. Job's faith never wavered. Those are the two books of the Bible that I absolutely love. And I read them on a regular basis because those are the two things that, from the Christian faith, I see them as enriching. I don't even go into the New Testament. I stay in the Old Testament, and I read those two books because those are reminders that no matter what you're going through, God is always there. God will always be there if you keep remembering him. Something we're taught as Muslims, that if you remember God every day, God will remember you every day. But if you forget God, God will forget you.
It's a good way
So
to put it.
those two books they're rocks for me. Whenever I am struggling, the book of Job and the book of Psalms, I'm in those books then.
I appreciate that, Khalid. Jeff, is there any role for churches, organized religion in these large secular communist cities that we have in a post 9/11 2.0?
Well, absolutely, because you want to get biblical. The story of Lot kind of teaches you that no matter how bad a society is, there are good people who are there. And, in San Francisco, there are, not a lot of them maybe, but there are God-fearing people in San Francisco. And you look for places where like-minded people can get together. And you want to find people who share your values. That's where you find it. And you're looking to set up a community school or neighborhood school. Start with your church. Who else has kids? Who else believes and worries about the same things you do? Who wants their kids to have the same kind of education that you want yours to have? that becomes your core group, and that's where you start. But also, there's going to be a lot of stress. There's going to be a lot of depression, and you're at your wit's end. You're trying to provide for your family. You're trying to educate your kids. There's all this stress. You may need someone to talk to that you can at least unload on and say, brother, man, I just got to talk to somebody. I just got to let this go. And they're going to be the same way. And they make you, swap ideas on how you relieve that stress and what you do. Maybe you're finding another guy who says, man, let's go out and shoot something. All right, let's go. Let's go to the range. Let's go shoot some shit. And, you can find that at church. I learned to shoot. Well, my grandfather taught me, but my formal education in guns was at church camp.
Nice.
They had a guy who was a former drill instructor. He brought a bunch of 22 rimfires. We all shot it on a range. And then on the last day, he had all these different guns. We got to shoot 357s and 44 Magnums and, Colt 45s. And, we got to shoot all these different handguns and rifles. And we also had an archery range where we had archery class.
And you never killed anybody in any school that you went to? Like you didn't?
No, I never did. Neither did anyone else. But that was Arkansas. That was the South in the 70s.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So actually, before we go into the fifth and final segment, one of the questions that I've lost track of how many times somebody's asked me this over the past few years is, what are skills to acquire for people who are disabled, physically not able to do certain things? So I want to insert it into the conversation at this point, because there's some good stuff here. So here's a list of ideas during a grid down SHTF scenario that you could learn on to continue being useful if you are overweight, disabled, not mobile. Sewing, stitching, knitting, gunsmithing, baking, general cooking, mechanic, vehicle repair, gardening, radio comms, electrical, plumbing, carpentry, tying knots, first aid, how to perform CPR, how to do the Heimlich maneuver, how to set a splint, how to apply a tourniquet, how to treat a burn, how to spot a concussion, how to treat hypothermia, how to treat heat exhaustion, how to recognize a stroke, land navigation and map reading. There's a big one for the younger generations. And that person goes on to say that's just a handful of examples, but
I would throw a teacher in there.
Yeah. There's just a ton of skills. And I'm not familiar with this company, by the way, but this is survivalschool.us. Just came up in a search, and they have a bunch of wilderness survival courses. And these are great things to take, especially as a family unit and everybody learning together. But most urban kids don't get a chance to attend to anything like this. And as a result of that, they don't have, the skill set that their rural cousins do. So, and I think in the past, though, that wasn't necessarily the case. There was some urban-rural divide, but it wasn't as extreme as it is today. I mean, when I think inner city urban, I think Glock switches. When I think country, I think country. So anyway, let's get into segment number 5. So crafting tomorrow's guardians. So these patchwork education centers, they will eventually morph and grow into blueprints that will result in a tougher America, in my opinion, and self-reliance drills that evolve into leadership and grooming youngins, young guns, even not the guns physical, but metaphorically speaking, to then be the next round of leaders who pass on these hands-on skills, these important lessons that they've learned. That it's common, right? You get older, you have kids, you teach the kids how to do the things that your grandfather taught you how to do, sort of thing. And that's part of the successful formula of America. And let me see, I think also, I think hustle might return, to be honest with you. I think when everything's not handed out on a silver platter, how many people are on food stamps now and SNAP? 42, 43 million. How many of those?
Yeah, it was like 46 or 47. It's a lot.
I don't know what the number is. Maybe somebody in the audience does. What's the percentage of those that are physically able, physically capable of working jobs? It's probably a pretty high number, right? So I don't think EBTs, welfare, SNAP, social safety nets were put out there so people could make a career out of being a fresh air inspector. It was meant to be a hand up, not a handout, but we've created this culture of dependence. You know, the loss of life from 9/11 2.0 won't be trivial. The loss of life afterwards won't be trivial. But if you're looking for something bright to come out of a really dark situation, maybe we regain that American spirit of not being lazy and actually working for stuff. I'll tell you a quick anecdotal story, and then I'm going to come to you first, Khalid, on some off-grid teaching stuff. But here's a quick one for you. I had a couple guys from Mercedes call me. They'd been based in North Carolina for approximately 6 months. They were German citizens. They were here to complete their engineering degrees. And in Germany, I don't know if it's the case for all engineering programs. Jeff can probably speak to it, but they had to do X amount of time hands-on, like practicum stuff. And so they had been hired by Mercedes-Benz, sent to North Carolina, and they're probably like mid-20s, something like that. And I get a call middle of the week, and they said, hey, we're going to take a long weekend, and we're going to drive down to the Keys. We were wondering if you'd like to have lunch on such and such a day when we pass through. And I said, yeah, sure, that's great. So we're having this conversation. They say to me, man, we never expected America to be X, Y, and Z. And I looked at them and I said, it isn't. And they said, yes, it is. You know, we've been here for 6 months and we've seen this. I said, you've seen what exists in Raleigh, Durham. You haven't seen America. I mean, we are 50 autonomous states. And not only that, in some states like Florida, the culture varies differently from one county to the next. And they said, well, there has to be something that you have in common as Americans. I said, there absolutely is. And they said, well, what is it? I said, leadership. And they got kind of offended when I said that. And they're like, well, we have good leaders in Germany. And without getting into that whole, you know, rabbit's hole, I said, I'm sure you have some good leaders in your country, but what you don't have is leadership baked into your culture like we do in America. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, leadership is not a title. Leadership is a snapshot in time. I said, have you seen any of the youngins playing football, American style football in Raleigh, Durham? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, that's called Pop Warner football. Yep. I said, when a player who's not wearing the captain's jersey gives his hand to an opponent who's on the ground and helps them up, they're displaying leadership by doing that. And as far as being to permeate all of a culture, that is one of the most common things in real American culture is leadership. And we've touched on this before, where the Germans hated fighting us during World War II because they'd kill a leader, squad level, battalion level, or anywhere in between. And next guy would jump in and replace them, and we would keep going. They hated fighting us. And this was going back about 20 years ago. I told them, I said, when you all go back to Germany, find a World War II vet and ask them how much they enjoyed fighting against Americans because of the leadership culture that we have. And now that's been on the wane since this chasm has been forced upon us by evil forces trying to pit us against each other. But real Americans, I roll with Randy's real American thing. I was like, what kind of an American are you? Are you a real American? Because if you believe that you can cut your junk off and become the other sex, you're not a real American. You're just a mentally ill person. Anyway, with that being said, Khalid, coming to you first, how much do you foresee the hands-on teaching taking off versus the classroom teaching in this exercise of essentially rebuilding the educational infrastructure in America?
Well, you've got to figure that for a certain amount of time, whether it be 6 months, a year, you're going to have all hands on because people are going to be rebuilding their lives. They're going to be getting back to normal. There's going to be a period of time where people aren't going to leave their homes because they're going to be so worried about going out and something happening that they won't leave their homes at all. So there's going to be a level. It's going to be the easiest way I can put it is it's going to be a growth process step by step. First, it's going to be the emergence from the home. When you emerge from the home, then you start building up. Once you start building up, then you start building out. Then you start connecting your communities and the unity starts coming back together again. The beauty of what, and I hate saying it this way, but whenever you have a disaster happen in the US, specifically in the US, you see communities come together. You see that relationship come back, that humanity come back. A tragedy like 9/11 2.0 will bring the outliers will stay outliers. They will not come back into the people. But those people that believe that there is a better way for us to do this will come together. They'll start talking to each other. They'll start sharing ideas. They'll start sharing skills. They'll start sharing values. You'll get people starting to step up and say, you know what? I'm really good at this. Let me help you with that. I'm really good at this. Let me help you with that. And that neighborhood concept will come back again. The thing that I miss the most from the US is that neighborhood concept where you knew your neighbors. Everyone knew everyone's kids. You talked to each other when there was a problem. If you had a problem, if someone got sick at home, you could call your neighbor and say, listen, my car's broken down. Can you take me to the hospital? And they, no matter what time it was, they'd be happy to do it. That has disappeared because these stupid things and the idea that we don't need to talk to each other anymore, that gap that's been created will go away once the tragedy happens. And people will be forced to rely on each other. Then you'll get back to Boy Scouts. Then you'll get back to Cub Scouts. Then you'll get back to church groups. Then you'll get back to building an education system that works for you. So you'll have skill-based education. You'll have vocational education. You'll have classroom education. And no one will look down on it because that's what you need right now. You'll build out from there then.
Yeah, appreciate that, Clede. So, Jeff, I mean, when we went to school, it wasn't centralized like it is now, which hopefully is going to be dismantled. What's the Department of Education's head's name? She's married to Vince McMahon, Linda McMahon.
Linda, yeah,
Linda McMahon. So it's her job basically to dismantle the.
I don't think she's married to him. I think it's his sister.
No, I think it's his wife.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, because I saw something on her tolerating his many trysts over the years, sort of thing.
Not important for the discussion.
No, not at all. She's interesting though. I don't. They're kind of an oddball couple, but she's interesting. Very smart lady for sure. I think she keeps all of her money separate from his too, if memory serves me right. But let's just say that we managed to get rid of this centralized educational beast that has done nothing but hurt American children. 9/11 2.0 happens. We start the rebuilding phase. Do you think we've learned our lesson at that point as far as centralized versus decentralized government? Because it's not just education. I think that everything that can possibly be given to the states and taken away from the feds should be done that way.
Yep.
It's going to vary from place to place. If you're in an area that was part of an attack, that response is in going back to what rebuilding is going to be different from an area that wasn't directly impacted.
Good point.
But I think one thing you will see leave is the whole insane areas, is the whole gun-free zone nonsense.
Yeah.
You will see schools that say, okay, we're going to get teachers qualified to carry and learn how to shoot and put them through training, the ones that volunteer to do it. You're going to see maybe communities having volunteer security guards, veterans, retired police officers, people who know what they're doing, going, volunteering at the school, just like you have grandmas and grandpas that volunteer at school. They'll just volunteer at school. They'll be packing. And turn the schools from easy targets to hard targets.
Yeah.
Final question for you, and then same question for you, Randy. If a household today has youngins, what should they be doing before 9/11 2.0 kicks off to be in the best position possible to continue the knowledge transfer, to continue the learning, the growth of their children?
Hard copies of information. Like I tried to buy a set of encyclopedias and failed miserably because, I bought a set and they sent a book. So we sent it back and said, no, bullshit. But you need a knowledge base that is not connected, to the internet. You can still have it in a computer if you can get a CD-ROM, or you can get it on a thumb drive. But you need You need information, vast amounts of information you can access offline.
So I don't know if you caught this or not, and I can't remember the name of it, but maybe one of the Guardians can put this into the live chat. Somebody posted a link in the Guardians chat last week to a survival product, which was essentially this small electronic device that had Wi-Fi capability, and it had all kinds of information on off-grid living, SHTF skills, all these things, and it never gets updated. It's just this, it's like a library that you can connect your device to by Wi-Fi, so the interwebs doesn't have to be up. It's like a little local server. It was a pretty brilliant. I went and read the whole website on it. It was interesting.
If you've got the time and you've got the ability to download all that, you could download the Encyclopedia Britannica to a freaking thumb drive now. I mean, you get a 1 gig thumb drive. I mean, I'm sorry, a 1 terabyte thumb drive.
Yeah,
you put that in there and have tons left over.
Yeah,
but then you put that somewhere, and as long as it doesn't get damaged or erased, you've got a whole encyclopedia on the thumb drive. You just got, and then if you have a laptop, it doesn't have to be an updated laptop as long as it can read the format of the encyclopedia. There you go.
For sure. Randy, your thoughts on what parents can do today to prepare for this? Because I don't know if you caught this while you were sick. So Khalid, the Pakistani military, put the herd on the command and control structure in Afghanistan. So the guys who would actually coordinate everybody for 9/11 2.0 and have probably bought us a little bit of time in the attack window instead of being mid-December to Ramadan, which starts February 18th. It looks like it's probably mid-March to mid-May. We've got a few extra months here to cross our T's and dot our I's before this shit kicks off. What do you think the things are that people should do, have youngins that are currently in school, that will help continue their growth after 9/11 2.0?
Well, I think a lot of what Jeff says, what you're probably going to want to do, you know what I mean, if there's a way to store information, the more hard copies you have, the better, obviously, because if you don't have power, it doesn't matter what you have on those hard drives. That's unfortunate. That's the only unfortunate truth about it.
For sure.
But, you know, you can go over little SOPs and little plans of, you know, this is how things will be. This is how we'll conduct family afterwards, that type of thing. But more than not, you know, is again, making sure they have food and water. That's, you know, kids aren't going to learn if they're malnourished. That's just a fact. So, you know, and again, I don't know, you know, it's going to come down to what you have available when all this happens. You know, they've got a few months they can store up what they have, but when it happens, you're going to have what you have, and that's going to be it. So, you know, I would look at some of these things we've talked about. I know that you've got a lot of information and the magazines and some other assets that you have online that people should probably start printing some of those out and buying some of these articles like you just talked about.
Well, we have quite a few people have actually done just what you said and printed stuff off. I mean, and that's no trivial thing. I'll just show this quickly because you mentioned
no, it's not, man. Printing is not easy.
Well, so if you go to our Substack, survivaldispatch.news, you'll see this entry right here called library. Okay. Yeah. And if you click on the library, you get multiple documents, if you're a member, that are extremely comprehensive. So these are anywhere from 100 to 200, 225 pages long. But we give away our home defense plan, for example, right there. It's free. Just click the button and download it. And this is our essentials guide, which combines 36 other guides. That's 228 pages long. If you had nothing but the essentials guide, when the shit hits the fan, you would have enough knowledge at your disposal. So a bunch of our guardians have taken these and printed them off. There's 37 of them. Do the math. I mean, you're talking thousands of pages.
No, it is
to print off.
But you know, what's your alternative?
Exactly. So
being screwed. That's what your alternative is.
Exactly. But you'll see SDI, Survival Dispatch Insider, and these are all the very polished professional magazines that Survival Dispatch has produced over the years. we sell them for $10 a piece, but if you sign up as a guardian at $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, you get all of these for free. Every last one of these costs you nothing, and it's extremely, I'm not being, showing favoritism or anything. It's extremely high quality stuff, to put it mildly. So I think that basically takes us to the end of tonight's main topic. I'll just close it up by saying that, centralized educational systems are already on the way out, but they will completely collapse, when 9/11 2.0 happens in the next imminent, not too far away, right? 4 or 5 months sort of thing. And that church, faith-based institutions, homeschooling networks, hands-on, guilds, they're going to become the backbone of knowledge preservation for Americans. And so I already had it built into the conclusion here, but I'm glad you guys mentioned as well. Start building your physical library of printed materials now. I mean, you can go and grab all of our PDFs, and if you can't print them for whatever reason, put them on a couple thumb drives and make sure you have some way to generate electricity from the sun, preferably, because if you go gas and we run out of gas, well, then you're shit out of luck. Propane's better than gas because it doesn't have to be tended to and rotated and all that crap. But build your library of printed materials. Also, try to identify people in your community, whether they're in your mag or not, that have knowledge that's going to be applicable. Like Jeff said, being a mechanic, for example, it's probably somebody you want to be friends with, right? And I would say that as long as we return to our roots, and educational stuff happening in homes, churches, and otherwise, that we'll be able to rebuild, I guess, the wisdom and values that this nation has had since its inception until Jimmy Carter came up with the Department of Education. Since then, the wheels have come off, and it's abhorrent. It's terrible. So with that being said, this is one of my favorite parts of the episode. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, so we've got the Carnival hero of the day, which, by the way, if you go to C Heaven, so letter C, Heaven, Heaven, my name, cheaven.substack.com, sign up for my Substack for free, because I do the Carnival retard of the day on my personal podcast every Sunday night. And man, there's no shortage of people to choose from, by the way. So tonight's hero of the day, there's a little bit of profanity in this. If you have youngins around, put your headphones on, turn it off, just mute it while this happens. But civilian hero tackles fleeing drunk driver who killed Texas cop in crash, 26 seconds. This guy who's running, he's the drunk. And this is the vehicle he was driving. They don't show you the cop, but it was bad.
When you're gonna leave, you kill somebody, you motherfucker! You kill somebody! Stay right there! You stay right there, motherfucker! You see what you did?
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, they probably would have caught the guy no matter what, but he deserved some 1970s, 80s type policing.
I was thinking he deserved another shot or two. That guy was really easy on him, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He deserves some 1970s and 80s policing, street justice. But thank God that guy was there and got the guy. Next one up is the reader submitted story of the day, and it's from Shannon G. I don't want to give out her last name, but this is on, finally, the third aircraft carrier that China's built is apparently officially been put into service now. We have all kinds of satellite imagery of this boat anchor of a boat with these massive 12 to 18 inch cracks going from side to side where the deck came apart. Now they're saying that, by the way, this is not a nuclear powered aircraft carrier, it's conventional, but they're saying this is only the second conventional aircraft carrier that actually has an electromagnetic pulse to launch planes. That's embargoed technology, but what that tells me is they managed to finally get through our security and they got our technology, because the Chinese don't innovate anything. It's against their culture. Innovation is considered gambling in Chinese culture, which is why they like to steal other people's shit. But let's have a quick watch of this video. China's most advanced aircraft carriers now in service. This is November 7th, 2025. President Xi Jinping attended his formal commissioning in Hainan. Winnie the Pooh. The Fujian is the world's largest conventionally powered aircraft carrier.
It's probably the only.
It is China's third aircraft carrier, and it's taken a long time to get this thing to leave port. Unlike its predecessors, the Fujian features an advanced electromagnetic launching system. It allows the vessel to launch aircraft with heavier weapons and larger fuel payloads. So, by the way, prior to them having the electromagnetic launch, all three of their aircraft carriers, and their first aircraft carrier is actually a Russian container ship that was converted to an aircraft carrier, and it's so small that you only have two choices. Either the planes leave with half fuel or half weapons payload. Only the U.S. Navy's Gerald R. Ford has such systems, once limited to nuclear-powered ships. So it sounds like the Ford is conventionally charged. China's two older carriers, the Shandong and Luang something, feature ski jump takeoffs. There's all kinds of videos on this, by the way. You can look them up, where the plane goes off the end of the ski jump and goes bloop, like a J. What were they? J-35s, where they copied our F-35s.
Yeah, the British invented the ski jump concept.
Unveiled June 2022, the Fujian has done a series of sea trials before its commissioning. Its deployment is expected to boost PLA Navy capabilities amid rising tensions in the region.
Yeah.
And that's it. So anyway, I appreciate you sending that in, Shannon.
They don't know how to operate aircraft carriers at sea.
Yeah, that might be the case, but you know what they do know how to do is build ships. They have built more ships in the past 12 months than we've built since World War II.
Yeah,
Get your head wrapped
they
around
build a lot of ships, but they're operating an aircraft carrier, especially in a combined fleet, is something we've been working on for 100 years.
I don't disagree, but
their first time.
Yeah, I don't.
There are other ones that really aren't deployable.
The issue the concern I have is we have 0.5% of the world's capability of producing warships, and China has 50%. If they take out a bunch of our ships, it's going to take a long time for us to rebuild them. So unless we buy new ones from Timo, maybe we can buy them from Timo, save some money and get that awesome Chinese quality, right? Because
there's like a 6-week delivery or something.
Okay.
And you have to pay a tariff on it when it comes into the country, by the way. Yeah. All right. So conflicted question 8. Haley was a young child when the complete collapse of modern society took place. Now in her 50s, she looks back and thinks of our time. How do you think future generations will describe the people living in our society today, and why? And let me see here. Cleve, we'll go to you first time around.
Well, future generations are going to say, we were backwards, because they're going to be in such technology and the world is going to be completely different for them. So, because before the collapse, they will have seen everything, and then the world will collapse on them. Their idea will be, okay, how do we go back to that time? I've done, like, part of my lifestyle is I've taken a lot of things my grandfather taught me, and I've brought them into my modern day life. So I keep that going forward with generation by generation by generation. My dad completely skipped everything his father taught him. Completely skipped it. I got to learn it, and I've implemented it in my life. The problem most people are going to have when they look back, the 50 years backwards, they're going to go, those guys, they had it pretty good, because they were growing their own food. They had their own houses. They had their own cars. They had it pretty good, because the way things are going, these things are going to disappear. The you own nothing idea is floating. And if that ever happens, it's game over.
Well, I'll put in 2 cents here before I go to Jeff and then Randy. Or actually, I'll go to Randy first, then Jeff. Is that I've been saying for quite some time, you can't have two disparate cultures occupy the same geography. There's zero instance of this happening over history, the recorded history. So I think one of the things that they'll be telling kids 50 years from now, that there was a time when there were two very diverse cultures, opposite ends of the spectrum in America, that resulted in the balkanization of America and then another civil war. And thankfully, we knocked out all the lunatics who think you can cut your dick off and become a woman. That's what I think is going to be told to our kids 50 years from now. Randy, you're up.
Man, this is a kind of a tough one, but kind of easy. I don't know. You can say a lot of things, obviously. I think they'll look back and see that, we came into the modern age of information and just shit the bed on ourselves. That's basically what's look back. And, this is what led to what happened. And hopefully we put measures into place that does not happen again.
Hopefully. Jeff?
I think they're going to look at us the way we look at the Romans. My God, they were so advanced. They had indoor plumbing. They had all these great buildings. They had this great society, and they pissed it all away.
Yep.
100%. I think we're all kind of we've all been black pilled these days.
Yep.
It's funny, not funny, but either way, want to give a shout out to all of our guardians. We appreciate you very, very much. If it wasn't for our guardians, our paying members, and our premier sponsor, Carnivalt, we couldn't work the insane hours that we work to do our best to bring you the truth, bring you guidance on prepping and survival and all the good stuff that goes with that. But Carnivalt, carnivalt.com, eat meat, all one word, 10% off. Randy, as you can see, is wearing a Carnivalt hat. They have single serve packets now as well. 100% American across the board. The bags, 100% American. The O2 absorbers, American. The beef, chicken, and pork is American. The beef is not just grass-fed, it's grass-finished. No mRNA, no histamines, no antibiotics, none of that bullshit. This is the highest quality of whole food that you can get, bar none. It reconstitutes in less than 10 minutes. I like the steak because you can reconstitute it 5 to 10 minutes, a little bit of salt, and a bouillon cube works great with water to reconstitute it, but it's so dry, it sucks the flavor right through the middle of the meat. Phenomenal. And the quality of protein. So Josh Bryant is a friend of mine. He's a living legend in the strength and conditioning world. He's got his master's in nutrition and all these other things. One serving, there's 6 servings in here, so there's 150 grams of protein in here. One serving, 1 ounce, that the 6 ounces rehydrates to 1.5 pounds of raw meat, but it doesn't have to be refrigerated because freeze dried. That 25 grams of protein in here is the equivalent of upwards of 75 grams of soy isolate protein that you'd have like protein shakes and stuff like that. It's not the same thing. He's also done studies that have shown that if you take world-class athletes who are highly tuned and you put them on all beef versus all chicken, they are bigger, faster, stronger on the beef than any other type of meat. The protein it's the best protein you could possibly get. So go to carnivalt.com, order up some of their amazing products. You can order it for prepping. Again, no refrigeration required. You can order it for convenience. Every single person that I've pulled into the Carnivalt world, which is quite a few people, has come back and said, holy shit, that's an awesome product. Everybody else cooks the meat and it's laden in MSG and sodium. It is not good for you. Then you reheat it, which is effectively cooking a second time, and it tastes like leather. This stuff, these guys they nailed how to do it raw. Nobody else has figured that out, because if you freeze dry fat, it turns to jelly. It doesn't freeze dry, and then it spoils the rest of the meat. Not for these guys. 0.05% relative moisture contents. Phenomenal product. Can't say enough good things about it. Check out our friends at vetstactical.com, by the way, for the cup holster. Awesome product. Like Jeff said the other night ago, way faster draw to pull your pistol from a cup holder in the console of your vehicle than off your person or up underneath the dash or wherever you may have it sitting. It's a really cool product and great guys. By the way, use the discount code SD10 to get 10% off on that. We got a shipment of the most amazing Wagyu jerky that I've ever had in my life. It's the best jerky I've ever had, bar none, because the fat content's really, really high on Wagyu, and it's good fats. It's not bad fats. And you're going to hear more about that in the coming weeks. Speaking of which, get this, India. They had orders go out. I got to tell this quick story because it'll piss everybody off. They sent a bunch of orders out to people of premium Wagyu, you know, what do you call them? Tomahawks and stuff like that. And they were on the plane where the engine fell off and it blew up in Kentucky a few days ago. And UPS reached out to them and said, you're talking many thousands of dollars in Wagyu beef. And they said, yeah, it's an act of God. Too bad, so sad. Screw you, Mr. Small Businessman. And that was UPS's response. I can just imagine what the response is to the families who had somebody killed and what the response is to the hospital bills, et cetera, et cetera. Last time I checked, an engine falling off an airplane is not an act of God. It's an act of not doing maintenance on your frickin' fleet. So anyway, screw you.
They're going to pay in the end. They can say whatever they want now.
They deserve to. They absolutely deserve to. So anyway,
attorneys.
Yeah. Well, they're the ones who make bank on it. But I will be back Sunday evening. seeheaven.substack.com. Start your week off with a laugh. It's an hour of Steve Inman videos and funny memes, some crazy news stories in there as well. But we talk doom and gloom all the time. So I like to start everybody's week off with a laugh. 7 p.m. Eastern. Then we'll be back on Monday evening, the usual time as well, 7 p.m. And the next episode in our long war series is on cultural preservation. And we haven't done a good job of this pre 9/11 2.0, but maybe that's one of the slivers of good things that come out of a horrible thing in 9/11 2.0. But anyways, between now and Sunday or Monday, when you tune in again, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America.
God bless America.
Enjoy the closing video.
I'm going to read a declaration of a state of war. Kids know the lines are drawn. Revolution is touching all of our lives. In the next 14 days, we will attack a symbol or institution of American injustice.
In 1969, the Weather Underground became stars of the student left. They urged the youth of America to join them in a violent revolution.
This system is going to be overthrown. It's going to mean a fight. And it's going to mean a lot of white people risking a lot of things.
If you sit in your house and live your white life and go to your white job and allow the country that you live in to murder people and to commit genocide, and you sit there and you don't do anything about it, that's violence.
White youth must choose sides now. We must either fight on the side of the oppressed or be on the side of the oppressor.
Our slogan was bring the war home. And we really wanted to give the United States and the rest of the world a sense that this country was going to be completely unlivable.
They had the Bonnie and Clyde factor. Many of them were attractive. They were into youth exuberance, sex, drugs. They wanted action. They wanted to kick ass.
Through revolutionary struggle sessions, members of the Weather Underground's inner circle refined their Marxist beliefs and reached a terrible decision.
They came to this conclusion that they have a grand project for the transformation and purification of the world. And in the face of that project, ordinary life is dispensable.
That choice ushered in a new age of radical assaults on the citizens of the United States.
Stanley and I started working on the wiring that first night. We had the thing pretty well built, and we're testing the connections by mid-morning Friday. Nick slid the box into the airline bag, then zippered the bag shut and hung it on my shoulder. Up the parcel goes, my hands to his, into the hole.
Their actions exploded America's beliefs about civil society and its established norms of political discourse.
White Americans are never afraid of the cops, even when they're committing insurrection.
Is check your privilege. Cannot argue against it. It is a systemic fact.
Saying these awful words and not expect awful actions.
Would you support that?
Yeah, 100%. He doesn't need to live. He doesn't need to be a president.